Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Maqbool with you at PTV World. Of course, with me are Farrukh Pitafi and Faisal in the studios. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at the overall political dynamics of the country, especially in light of the upcoming general elections in the country, which seem to have a certain time frame after the announcement by the ECB, giving about the last week of January as the expected timeline of the polls to be conducted. At the same time, of course, there is a lot of discussion surrounding the kind of involvement different political parties will be witnessing as per this election. We, of course, also know that on the horizon is the return of the PMLN leader, Mr. Nawaz Sharif, which seems to be a cause of a lot of debate, especially in terms of what his future will be like and what sort of legal obligations he will have to go through upon his return. At the same time, of course, is the PTI chairman and the former Prime Minister, whose fate is also undecided, especially in the way that he is going to be involved or not in the upcoming general election, something that the current caretaker Prime Minister also referred to, that with or without him, the elections are going to continue, and that he is not something that is a necessary requirement for the elections to be held, and that those who are in jails because of their unlawful actions need not take part in the elections. And this is important, especially in terms of the kind of falling we've seen previously of the PTI and the statements coming in from the PTI's leadership claiming that this will be unethical or unconstitutional. So we're going to try and figure out what that would mean and in what case that may be true. We're also going to be exploring, of course, the scenarios surrounding the time frame of the elections, with certain parties, of course, happy to hear at least a general time frame as to when the polls will be conducted, while others also concerned about the fact that a real date, an actual date, has not been set up. So we're going to be taking a look at all of that, and then, of course, with regards to the narratives of different parties and their manifestos, whether or not they're really prepared for the elections, and then if the ECP and the current caretaker setup will be equipped enough, both financially and logistically, in terms of the actual conduct of the elections. That is going to be the focus of our first segment of the show today. Our next one is going to take a look at the slight improvement that we've been seeing for quite some time now in our economic situation, with the rupee gaining against the dollar. And this is important, especially, of course, with a lot of prices and a lot of actions being linked to the way that the rupee seem to be depreciating. And this is something that seemed to be bringing in positive news in the country. But unfortunately, a lot of the experts that have looked at this particular gain have commented that perhaps this may not be a long-lived and will not be sustainable. And because of that, there needs to be a lot of concern in terms of exactly how this development is viewed and what sort of perspective we need to keep in mind given the current scenario, and also try and understand the reasons behind this appreciation, especially in terms of the actions taken by the government against illegal activities. So we're going to try and take a look at that at the end of the show today. Of course, Farrukh and Faisal will be with me throughout the show, and we've also been joined for our first segment by Mr. Muneeb. Qadir is a political analyst and legal expert, and also Barrister shabbir, Shah, Advocate Supreme Court. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of the discussion. And let me start with you, Muneeb Saab. The situation, when we take a look at the current, of course, scenario, points towards a lot of question marks, especially in terms of the conduct by the ECP, and then, of course, the way that different political parties are also going to be responding to the current dynamics. There's, of course, a lot of question marks and discussions surrounding how the PMLN, the PPP, and the PTI majorly will be taking a look at these elections, but of course, along with them, other parties, and how exactly different areas of the country are going to be affected by the new delimitations. And so we're going to try and understand all of that. But given the current scenario at the moment and the time frame that we have in mind, what do you think will be the way forward, especially in terms of the impact that this is going to have on different political parties? And especially when we take a look at, of course, top leaders being part of the game, then do you think that if certain leaders are skipped in this election, it's going to have a huge impact?
The ECP has actually announced that the election are due to take place in the last week of January, and I think everyone is awaiting what future brings for the country, what happens in 2024 election. But of course, the delimitation is going to be announced in November, and certain political parties are insistent on knowing the exact dates, whereas there's more flexibility from PMLN, for example. Plus, the caretaker Prime Minister, Mr. Anwar Haq Kakar, he has also stated that even a political party like PTI, whose leadership and top tier leadership are all behind bars anyway, even they can contest election because there are thousands of their members which are free of any guilt, which who were not involved in the 9th May illegal unlawful attacks. So they can contest election, and the election can still go ahead even if the leaders of respective political parties like the PTI chairman are incarcerated. So I think that the way that elections are going to play out and the run-up for election campaign, it's going to be very interesting. And there's, of course, a lot of talk about the PMLN Supremo, Mr. Nawaz Sharif, returning back onto the political landscape after 4 years of self-imposed exile. How is that going to play out? Whether the NAB ordinance amendments, which had been set aside by the Supreme Court recently under the Chief Justiceship of Umar Atab and Dayal Sahab before his retirement, how is that going to affect or impact upon not just PTI, I mean, even People's Party and PMLN leaders and their ability to fight and contest the election? That remains to be seen. And that is very closely tied to the judgments which are expected under the leadership of the current Chief Justice, Mr. Qazi Faizi Sir. So it's a very interesting time.
Right, absolutely. Barrister Shabbir, welcome to the debate. The discussion surrounding, of course, the return of Mr. Nawaz Sharif is important, especially in terms of the kind of legal obligations he will have to go through. And then, of course, there's also the statement that Mr. Muneeb was also referring to by the caretaker Prime Minister regarding the involvement of the PTI chairman in the electoral process. And I want to understand what you think will be the kind of legal measures that we're going to be seeing in the fate of these two leaders in particular, especially given whether or not it's possible for them to be involved in the upcoming general elections.
Thank you, Sana. You see, if we discuss the return of previous Prime Minister, Mr. Nawaz Sharif, he already faces a disqualification given by a court of law under Article 62(1)(f) of the Constitution. Now, the moot question would be whether or not that disqualification is a permanent disqualification or is it a one-time disqualification. The judgments of the Honorable Supreme Court previously on 62(1)(f), particularly in the case of Samiullah Baloch, hold that 62(1)(f) disqualifications are permanent. I may not agree with them or with the ratio of those judgments because the disqualifications provided for offences involving moral turpitude. For example, if you've committed murder and you've finished your sentence, you could still be qualified to contest elections after a period of 2 or 5 years if it is provided. But if you are adjudged as dishonest for one time, it serves as a permanent disqualification. But at present point, the moot question and a very interesting question is that the amendment under the Elections Act, by virtue of Elections Act 2023, Section 232 states that Article 62 and 63 disqualifications, for those where the time frame is provided, the disqualification would be the same as provided in the Constitution. But for those such as 62(1)(f), where there is no time frame, the disqualification would be for a period of 5 years from the date of such declaration given by a court of law. So in Nawaz Sharif's case, the disqualification from the date of Panama judgment after 5 years has already expired. A question would arise that whether or not under the new act, can he contest elections or will he contesting the elections be violative of the judgment passed by the Honorable Supreme Court? It's not an open and shut case, but having seen the election laws, I am of the opinion that unless the new act under the Section 232 is declared as ultra vires, it continues to hold the field, and Mia Nawaz Sharif would be able to contest elections, and his form ought to be accepted, and he will take part in the elections on the basis of Section 232 of the 2023 Elections Act, until and unless that section is declared as ultra vires the Constitution. And looking at the present trend, it appears that the Honorable Supreme Court has exercised restraint in exercise of Article 184.3, and therefore a petition would have to be filed before one of the high courts, wherein if the high court strikes down the section 232, then it will have any impact. Otherwise, looking at it from the present perspective, Mr. Nawaz Sharif has green signal to contest elections.
All right. And what about the former Prime Minister and PTI Chairman?
Can I take him in the second round?
All right. I guess we need to talk a little bit about Mr. Nawaz Sharif as well. But then I want to take your opinion also, Muneeb Saab, on it. It seems then that the PMLN has a strong case.
I think
I don't know.
PMLN does indeed have a strong case. Referred to by Advocate Shah here. He just mentioned that there has been an amendment to the Election Act which says that maximum disqualification in, for example, Nawaz Sharif Saab's case could be 5 years. And those 5 years had been completed in 2022. Even other than that, under the former Chief Justice Umar Bandial, the reviews of Orders and Judgments Act had been set aside. But then, that is closely linked to the validity or otherwise of the other Supreme Court Practice and Procedures Act, which is being deliberated upon by the current, under the current leadership of Chief Justice Qazi Faizi. Now, if they come to the conclusion that that was a very, it could not have been set aside, were declared by Chief Justice Umar Bandial in the interim, they could be revisited. And if the judgment which had declared the review of Orders and Judgments Act to be unlawful and illegal, if that is set aside, it means that Mr. Nawaz Sharif would have another avenue to explore, which is to seek review against the Panama judgment which went against him and which had disqualified him. So I do think that he has a lot of legal weapons up his armory, and that is the reason perhaps which has motivated him to return to Pakistan and to contest election and to launch his campaign on 21st October. So, I mean, let's see what future has in store for us.
And for we've been hearing, of course, different leaders speak about the fact that Mr. Nawaz Sharif needs to face the law upon his return, and that the law will take its due course. And that may be so, but in terms of what exactly that means, and especially what is it that the PMLN plans to do, is something still that we will have to see. There is talk about the Nawaz Sharif effect, but I want to understand then whether or not the PMLN plans for him to actively take part in the upcoming general elections or not.
Right, Sana beats me exactly. Since you are asking what exactly can it do, I really wonder what it can do when your entire message is that 5 years ago we were actually building an El Dorado and somebody actually came and smashed it, right? Today's realities are very different. We have seen how Ishaq Dar's magic could not work. We have seen how various other things did not happen. But I want to actually commend Pakistan's intelligence here also. I mean, every time we hear people, and this is not particular only to our channel, go to YouTube channel, go to any channel, 50, 60, 70, whatever the number now may be, everybody is talking about hypotheticals. Mia Nawaz Sharif may come back. He's saying he will come back. He hasn't come back yet. Election. No, I'm just merely pointing out that something that is not concrete yet. I cannot actually verify it with my sense perception that the man is here.
Yeah.
Similarly, election date will be announced. It hasn't been announced, right? So with that kind of a situation, how can I actually count on variables which are not effectively any kind of variables at all right now? At this moment, there is a government in Pakistan, there are political parties which are facing various kind of litigation. My concern right now is that when you go to any drawing room discussion in Islamabad, you hear amazing stories, right? On one side, this hypothetical is there that today you live and learn. Today somebody said that Pakistan is going to have another caretaker government within a week or two. The gentleman was claiming that he is going to be a part of the caretaker setup, but that is going to last for 2 years, right? This is one take. There's another amazing take that in Pakistan, why do we actually insist on seeing Nawaz Sharif back? Because in India, elections are going to take place, and India's Modi actually wants to come with his shock and awe and influence, and he wants to shake hand and make everything goody-goody. So Nawaz Sharif is the only person who he trusts. Amazingly, I don't know what becomes of Narendra Modi in India. I know in Punjab at this moment there is hardly any takers for PMLN's politics. So with that kind of hypotheticals, then we complain that we are actually living in a world of conspiracy theories. Because nothing is verifiable right now. Why not talk about the political parties which are working on ground? At this moment, if you are talking about election preparedness, at the start of the show you mentioned manifestos. Have you seen any manifesto of any political party yet, Sana? You haven't, right?
No.
So what becomes of that? Have you seen the name of candidates from various constituencies or possible constituencies? You haven't. Have you seen any kind of shadow cabinet or shadow government in making? No. Why? Because in Pakistan these things don't matter. Every person keeps on obsessing about Trucky Batti, which is the central government, and nobody pays attention to the grassroots government, which was supposed to be our deliverer. Remember, till the time at the grassroots level you don't have an elected government, what you have is a viceroy Raj. You have a colonial setup where somebody is appointed to govern over the people. With that kind of a situation, should I be too worried about what is happening at the center? I don't think so. And I don't think that these political parties which are actually acting as if they are already made, they are made or they are shoo-in. I don't think so.
Right, and Faisal, you have spoken a lot about how political parties are going to be reacting to, of course, the election time frame and whether or not there's going to be a lot of discussion around it as part of their narrative prior to these elections. But what we're seeing now with different political parties, of course, is quite interesting in terms of what sort of influence particular leaders will have as we move closer to the elections. One, of course, is the return of Mr. Nawaz Sharif. Then, of course, there is the impact that the PTI chairman may or may not have on the party, and then of course the PPP as well. And you have your own perspective on each of these parties as well and others. And I wanted for you to also explain to us, given the kind of actions and legal obligations that we're currently discussing, do you think that anything majorly can impact the way that these parties have planned for the elections?
Well, anything majorly party by party, if I talk about, of course, and that is related to if I predict about PMLN. First of all, I'll talk about whether former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif is coming or not. I'm not sure about whether he's coming or not, but all I'm sure about is that the leaders, Tier 3, Tier 4 leaders, I'm talking about the MNAs and MPAs, they are of the view that even if he comes, it won't make a huge difference to the ground realities now. But they believe that if Nawaz Sharif had returned last year, while his obviously younger brother took the office, premier office, during that time, if he was here, then of course the situation would have been different because he was already here, and of course the campaign for the party would have been on full swing, and the damage would have been controlled at that time. But now it is too late. We have missed the train, and this is what I'm talking about: the PMLNs, MNAs, and MPAs who contest the elections. They simply say that, of course, PTI is one factor, and there is another factor which others, everywhere they keep on neglecting, and that is of 17 to 18,000 votes which get secured by TLP. TLP has gained ground as well in the rural Punjab, and of course during whole this time. And because I myself hail from a rural Punjab.
I know you're a torchbearer after PTI. You are a torchbearer for TLP. But I'm asking you, where is the evidence? Which seat have they won?
They haven't won, but whatever the elections, I'm talking about the previous election. We know that in each and every constituency, their votes were obviously in between 10,000 to 20,000, and they were the ones who actually dented the efforts of PMLN, because PMLN always used to get rural votes from rural Punjab. And here I want to mention about the PTI as well. Everyone keeps on highlighting that PTI is all set to go for the elections. No, they are not up for the election as soon as possible, unless they know the facts about whatever is going to happen with their chairman's cases. Of course, their chairman is having cases against him, and unless them cases are solved and he gets a green signal to go for the election and contest election, they won't be obviously ready for it.
Because but the elections will not wait for him. Are you suggesting they might?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That is why the parties are not hurriedly looking for the election as soon as possible. The only party that portrays itself going for election, and that is People's Party.
And PTI also. PTI keeps on demanding early elections.
Only on the face of it. If today,
but they do keep on actually creating fuss about
it. They create fuss of it because they know it's the narrative they have been selling, and of course they have to knock around the same narrative. Only People's Party is the party that.
Let's talk about a hypothetical situation where the PTI chairman is not part of the electoral process. Do you think that the PTI will not be part of elections then?
I believe so.
No, I don't think so.
No, I
think it will be part of the election process, and I think that it will also be banking on a miracle where there is a possibility that even if they give ticket to a lamp post, it gets.
Sana, why I believe so? Because if we talk about the tier 2 or tier 3 leadership of PTI, even they are facing problems. So if they are not there, then of course
anybody can fight.
Who can? No, anybody
you can contest.
But the party can.
I could contest. The party is a party. Party chairman. If not party chairman, then of course the vice chairman and the leadership
without
underneath.
the party chairman, there is no party.
There is no party.
Okay, Barrister Shabbir, it's round 2, and we're talking about the PTI chairman. So it's quite relevant that you take up my previous question and let us know what you think will be the legal scenario surrounding the PTI chairman, and whether or not you think that the PTI will be then part of the electoral process without him, as the caretaker Prime Minister said so.
Thank you. You see, the answer lies in the Constitution. There is a difference between the disqualification of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. 62(1)(f), as was held previously, was a permanent disqualification. 63(1)(h) is a disqualification which has a time frame prescribed to it, which is 5 years from the date of conviction. So until and unless that judgment is suspended or set aside by a court of law, and there is a chance that a judgment or a conviction could also be suspended or could also be set aside. If assuming that the conviction is not suspended or not set aside, then the period is 5 years. So from the date of conviction, for a period of 5 years, he cannot contest elections. That is assuming that the judgment or conviction is not suspended. There is a chance that it might be set aside or it might be suspended. Now, the second question that you asked, it's a rather interesting question, because if it were open to anyone to in a way prevent a political party from contesting elections, or to ban a political party from contesting elections, we would have seen it by now. The Constitution, particularly Article 17(2), imposes a beautifully balancing clause which says that the test is twofold. Number one, the federal government has to give a declaration that a political party has been operating against the sovereignty and integrity of Pakistan. So, firstly, that declaration must come from the federal government. And that is not the end of the matter. If it were open to the federal government, you would have seen that declaration by now. But the second check is that such declaration must be approved by the Supreme Court of Pakistan. So I don't think that at this point in time, anybody can worry that PTI is being banned as a political party. It doesn't seem in sight because the Constitution places that check that not just the federal government, but the Supreme Court must approve of that declaration given by the federal government. So I think it is pretty clear.
Muneeb Sahab, the fact then that when we take a look at the caretaker Prime Minister's statement, given the fact that whether or not, of course, the PTI chairman is part of the electoral process, the elections will continue. This is something that, of course, has not gone down too well with PTI leaders, and they've talked about how this is unconstitutional and unethical. And I want to understand really where they're coming from, and I want to know whoever it is, whichever party they may belong to, if there is a matter that is pending in the courts, and there is a time frame for the elections in the country. We are at a point where elections are due, and that person's case is still pending. Of course, the elections will not be according to the schedule of their cases, I'm assuming. And then if we take a look at whatever the outcome may be, and the election time frame is happening before the outcome actually comes out, really what is the issue here then of the party? Can that party actually raise an issue that because our matter is pending, it is not fair, or it is not constitutional or not ethical that our party or our party chairman is not part of the electoral process? Is that a valid concern? Because otherwise what the PM said does not seem to warrant any reservation.
Absolutely. I think that the overarching principle is contained in Article 218 of the Constitution itself, which embodies the idea of free and fair election that has to be conducted by the ECP. Now, PTI supporters could contend that with our top leadership, including our chairman, incarcerated behind bars and his case still pending before the courts, we cannot really have free and fair election. But by the same token, one must not forget the fact that the so-called free and fair election that they're talking about, PTI supporters. Now, the said free and fair election are subject to the law and the Constitution. So you cannot say that just because the legal process is taking its own sweet time to come to a conclusion, the election in itself becomes, unfair, or that it is not free. So if things are taking place, and if the legal proceedings are unfolding in accordance with the law and all the processes which are necessary for fair trial, in this case that of the PTI chairman, then I really don't see that there's anything very problematic. I was just reading the HRCP statement on Prime Minister Qadir's a remark that the election can still take place even without the PTI chairman, and an article on Dawn which actually wrongly stated that the conviction of PTI chairman has recently been overturned. No, it has not. It's the short sentence which has been overturned. The conviction still stands. So he is lawfully incarcerated, by the way, not in relation to the other case, the Cypher case. And there the special court has said that for security purposes, and also because official secret sector at play, he is to be tried in Attak jail under judicial custody, and his conviction is also perfectly lawful because, like I said, it hasn't been set aside as of yet. So Judge Humayun Dilawar, when he disqualified the PTI chairman for 5 years, because that decision still stands, I really don't think that if the Prime Minister has hypothetically given a statement that if those proceedings are still ongoing, and if the PTI chairman still remains incarcerated due to around 180 cases or more, which may come in any form or the other to haunt the PTI chairman, if it's happening legally, I don't think that there should be any concerns about the fairness of the election. That is a separate matter altogether.
Right, absolutely. Thank you very much, Muneeb Sahab, for joining us, and thank you very much, Faisal, for being part of the debate as well. Farrukh, of course, there is one aspect that is the legality and whether or not somebody can actually raise an objection legally. But I want to also understand then, given the way that the narrative has been formed by the PTI's leadership in the past and how we've seen previous reactions, especially May 9th, against the PTI chairman's arrests, I want to then understand whether or not, whatever the legal scenario may be, the fact that this is being framed by the PTI as something that is being done unfairly to them, or that they are deliberately being kept out of the electoral process, is something that might impact or damage the electoral process itself?
Right, Sana, frankly, again, going back to the world of conspiracy theories and just highlighting how much we rely on that, the biggest problem with such narratives is that it actually overlooks grassroots realities, right? May 9th was a day when something happened, right? Similarly, before that also, when the previous government was actually on its way out, there were many things that were done which were perhaps not as per the book. So after that, do you think that law should not actually take its course? That there shouldn't be any consequences for any lawbreaker? A. Secondly, I don't understand this furor over the Prime Minister's statement. A. The biggest thing is that at this moment, election safety and security and transparency is going to be ensured not by the Prime Minister, but by the Election Commission, right? Prime Minister is there, but he's a caretaker, in a caretaker setup, who is entitled to his own views, and that doesn't affect anything either way. Whether Imran Khan is going to be prosecuted or not, it is up to courts, it is not up to the Prime Minister. So this is one part. The second part regarding what he's saying, I think it makes sense that transparency of elections, you know, how clean they are, is not dependent on person A, B, C or D participating in the elections, right? Elections are transparent, they are stable, they are clear, they are clean, if you can actually rely on the election day experience, and that will be ensured. So I don't understand all this furor. But my concern is, regardless of everything else that was said between me and Faisal, all political parties, I think, keep on looking for a miracle. Yeah. The biggest problem is they are not talking to the actual people who are going to vote on the election day. Yeah. And they are the people of Pakistan. And I can tell you, how many times have I sat here and told you that in this election and next elections, I'm not going to vote. So this is the spirit of the common man on the street as well. They don't care. They know that no matter who they elect, it is always going to be a talk about the elite politics, not their own issues. So why should they bother? Right. So I don't think that miracle is coming. All these parties can actually flatter themselves that they are going to become victorious, because suddenly people are going to go into harm's way and do something great for them. I don't think that is happening.
Right, and I'm glad you spoke about what people, how people are, of course, going to be taking a look at all of this and whether or not anybody is talking to them. And Faisal, that's important, especially in terms of how much people are invested with certain political leaders as well. And of course, particular leaders have their own influence and their own followers as well. And we've seen that in the case of many parties, including PTI and PPP and even the PMLN. And I want to then understand, given whatever the legal scenario is, whatever the legal course may be, then what really is the way that we can incorporate bringing in the people and their opinion within this process as well, given the fact that many perhaps will be banking on their leadership's involvement in the electoral process, but that may not always be possible.
Yes, Sana, if we look at the whole process of electing the people for obviously our parliament, it's all about will of the people. Will of the people is important for Constitution Avenue. for Pakistan and for our society as well. And that will of the people, I must say, I don't know why Farrukh Bhai has reached to this conclusion that he won't be voting. Even I would be advocating.
It is my intention,
Yeah.
not conclusion.
I would be advocating him as well to vote, because vote is the only.
Faisal, hang on. Understand the consequences of
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Right, voting is a right and it is a responsibility,
Yeah.
right? The right bit usually is not there in the past. We know that people were restrained from voting, right? Now, if I'm so demoralized, I'm 40% of my household, that is people of Pakistan, is below poverty line. You bring the vote to me and say, look, I'm giving you the right. And I said, keep it away.
Yeah, it's
I
not
don't
enough.
want
Yeah,
it.
Sana, I tell you, in last 16, 17 months, whatever has happened in my country, I'm a very nationalist, I'm a very patriot, and sometimes I'm beyond limits.
Who is not?
Well, everyone is, but sometimes I'm beyond limits. And
So why are you
seriously,
bringing it up?
for 17 months, I've been looking around things very keenly, and
Okay.
of course I have the account of it, whatever has been taking place in this country, and I know who's been doing in this country, and the only thing I can do as a very responsible citizen, that I have a right to vote, and I will give my
understand
vote,
your perspective.
and that is how I'll obviously express my
All right.
Yeah,
feelings.
love
for the-
for the
and-
country is one
yeah.
thing, optimism is another.
Yeah.
But living in reality is also important, right?
It is.
I cannot subscribe to a fantasy world which never materializes.
All right.
Yeah, Sana, that is
all
what
we have time for. Then this.
Sana, one last thing, one last thing I wanted to say. It was your birthday, and we wanted to wish you a very happy birthday, Sana.
Thank you. Thank you
and
very
may
much,
you have
everyone.
many, many more.
Thank you. You've all
Thank
been
you,
so
Sana.
kind even before the show, all the team. Thank you very much to PTV and, of course, all my team members for making this day special for me. But we still have another segment
Yeah.
to talk about, and
Keep
we're going
forgot
to be
that.
talking about something
Yeah.
positive, which is happening on the country's economic side. And this is important, especially, of course, given the kind of tough times that all of us have been facing for very long now. Farrukh, the situation, especially in terms of the value of the rupee, seems to be encouraging. But then there are those who say that this is short-lived and that we won't be seeing that continuing for very long. And what do we make of this current then development, and how much do we sort of celebrate?
Right, Sanam. Regarding those pundits who are saying it is temporary, it reminds me, although it is a serious moment, I wanted to actually bring in a comic relief of some sort. There was a family, one child of the family kept on saying every day that the next day one member will be shot in the family, right? Everybody would say, curse you, why are you saying such a thing?
Yeah.
The next day, people realized that that child had run away, right? At this moment, when you talk about the whole situation, the people who are actually telling you why these things are not sustainable, has it occurred to you that they might have a vested interest in
Exactly.
that matter, right? Pakistan is a country of hoarders, the rich hoard, the poor keep on struggling. So dollars are also hoarded in the country. There are many people who have been investing, if not in dollar, then the Bitcoin, actually crypto, version of dollar. And there are many people who keep on banking on the idea that dollar will appreciate and rupee will depreciate. Right?
Yeah.
So are they going to tell the others that, okay, it's okay, whatever $100,000 I have stashed, their value is going to decline tomorrow? No, they'll say that tomorrow things are going to be different, and but this country cannot be actually controlled. So everything is going, elements are going to rise, and dollar is going to go across, through the roof. So that will continue to happen. But what has happened so far? There were crackdowns. There were crackdowns on the right places, and we have seen that immediate impact was, for example, when you actually shuttered the Peshawar's currency market, immediately Kabuli, Afghanistan's currency note actually declined in value and dollar appreciated there. What does it mean? That dollar was being smuggled from Pakistan to Afghanistan. Similarly, when you look at how people kept on sending money through illegal means, I'm talking about remittances. Remember, remittances are not any kind of charity. If I'm working abroad and my family is in Pakistan, I'm bound to send them money. So if remittances start declining, what does it mean? That I'm not using the official channels. I'm sending it through Hundi, Hawala, or whatever illegal channels exist. So if there's a crackdown on that, this will also happen. Things will come down. The biggest problem is when you listen to the pundits and the business community, they keep on telling you that there is not enough value in the economy. That is not true, Sana. Pakistan is, 240 million people. It is not merely Islamabad, Karachi, or any other city. Do you think that those people actually don't go about their life? They don't earn, they don't work at all? Everyone does. So there is value in the economy. We just keep on telling ourselves that we are not doing anything substantial, or we cannot, because our elite keeps on stashing and keeps on hoarding.
Right.
And they are the elitist, and that's why the poor man keeps on suffering.
Right, and Faisal, a lot of the analysis that we have seen also points towards the kind of actions taken by the government, especially in terms of administrative measures or going against unlawful and illegal activities, and I'm sure that has contributed, of course. But in terms of the kind of dynamics that Farrukh is also talking about, and what we've been hearing from other experts globally as well, and the kind of tough measures that Pakistan would have to take for some time, how much do you think of an impact this has on the current situation, and how much more do we need to do, especially in terms of such administrative reforms to help the situation improve?
Sana, obviously, whatever the steps have been taken in recent times, of course, there is a continuity which is required to them. And if we, think of that, if we keep on doing it, or more steps, if they are taken, then obviously rupee would appreciate more against the dollars. That won't happen. Of course, for that, of course, we need for our economy to grow, number one, and for our economy to fix itself, and that is obviously long-term plan and long-term policy which is required for that. But here I want to appreciate the institutions, I want to appreciate the especially Pakistan Army as well, because Chief of the Army Staff, he's been taking obviously serious note of whatever's been taken, whatever's been going wrong in terms of dollars being smuggled into Afghanistan, and there is an unchecked trade, unchecked smuggling which keeps on going with Afghanistan, and I think that has stopped. Plus the dollar which kept on moving there, it has stopped. And now we are obviously in that phase where we are controlling ourselves, and we are obviously saving our dollars by capping all of them loopholes. And I think that's how we need to continue doing this. Sure. And somehow the legalized channels of trade with Afghanistan, they should go along, and that is how our own currency would appreciate, not only against dollar, but the
I love it whenever Faisal is a champion for a lost cause. Earlier he was talking about TLP, now he is talking about saving Afghan Taliban, of course.
No, not
trade. But hang on.
Trade must go on.
No, I do know what does that mean. I believe that everything that strengthens your nation should work. Other things can beat. But regarding something that I was saying, Sana, of course, when it comes to institutions, the army, they have played a very crucial role, and we should appreciate it.
Yeah.
But remember that it actually brings us to a micro issue. Your role, my role, and people of everybody who's conscientious that there was a congressman in America called John Lewis, and he used to say something great. He was civil liberty, civil rights movements champion, and he used to say, make good trouble. So just to remind viewers that if we want we can make good trouble, may it be economy, may
Yeah.
it be public
That is
rights.
correct.
Imran Riaz Khan came back to his home.
Exactly.
So there are people who are actually insisting that those rights prevail. And if we are doing our job well,
Right.
things will improve.
And about
Right.
Imran Riaz Khan,
Yes,
Sana,
very, very quick.
Sana and Farrukh, you remember there were journalists, there were analysts who kept on saying, oh, he's dead, and obviously his family was worried about him.
Yeah.
And that's how they've been extending allegations against the institutions as well.
Yeah.
And this is so sad.
Yeah.
I mean, why people are not responsible enough when it comes to these kind of statements.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Farrukh and Faisal, for joining us in the debate. There's, of course, much still left to be explored, and we're going to be doing that in the rest of our shows. But we really hope whatever happens tomorrow is better for the country, and we'll be doing our part in that. That's all that we have from the debate. We'll now see you tomorrow.